is the message. So that's the most important thing here. So I see some familiar faces, but for those who don't know me, these are my, the stuff that I've done. So I finished a degree in psychology and then went to law school for 2 years, then dropped out. So I have a joke that I'm a psycho aside from being loca. Loca, Spanish word for crazy. Yeah, anyway, kidding aside, just to clarify, I'm not a practicing psychologist. I basically shifted careers, and I focused specifically on the defer side. So daytime, I use my skills and knowledge to help protect and defend the organization I work for. And during my free time, I volunteer for a lot of different community events. In fact, I love attending conferences and, being with you because you're my people. I mean, I get to dress up in my, favorite stuff, and nobody looks at me strangely, and in fact would, compliment me. Awesome. By the way, thank you, Dave. He's my husband who makes the dresses for my conferences. Okay. And I'm an accredited mental health first aider standard, and just this year I got my accreditation to teach mental health first aid. So I'm now an accredited instructor. Okay, but among all the things that I've done, this is my special set of skills that I'm very proud. Yeah. 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 So let's start first with threat modeling. So this is an overview. So I'm pretty sure a majority of you have heard, or maybe, are actually doing threat modeling as their day-to-day work activities. But for those people who may not actually know what threat modeling is all about, think of it's just a process wherein you identify what are the potential threats, and then you will now prioritize the mitigations. So the idea is that you will have the abstraction of your system, and then you have the profiles of potential attackers, and then you have a catalog of potential threats. Okay, now if you are like me, a woman of color, okay, I have been threat modeling since I reached puberty. I didn't know about that. It's personal threat modeling. I've walked in a busy street, and I've had drivers say, okay, I can't say those things here, but you know what I mean, right? So in a way, I didn't know before I went to cybersecurity, I've already been doing threat modeling on a personal basis. Now, I'm gonna cover two approaches to doing threat modeling as part of this talk. So who among you have heard of STRIDE? Please raise your hand. Awesome, almost like a lot of you. But for those who don't know about this is a threat modeling approach that was adopted by Microsoft in 2022, and this is the most mature threat modeling method available. So think of it, you are looking at the entire system design, and it addresses potential security properties that are violated by the threat. So STRIDE stands for spoofing identity, T, tampering with data, repudiation, information disclosure, denial of service, and then elevation of privilege. So if this threat happens in your particular system, there are security properties that are violated. So this is a quite mature, approach. So that's why I'm not surprised that a lot of you have heard about it. What about this? How about PASTA? Anybody has heard of it? Okay, compared to STRIDE, just a little bit less. But among the threat modeling names, this is my favorite because it's pasta. I like cooking. I like cooking pasta. But PASTA in this particular situation stands for Process for Attack Simulation and Threat Analysis. So it's a risk-centric approach, plus it combines business and technical requirements. Compared to STRIDE, STRIDE is looking at the technical perspective, but for PASTA, there is engagement with the different parts of the businesses. So for example, first part is defining objectives. In order to protect something, you need to find out what is important for your organization. What are you supposed to be protecting? And then, of course, you engage with the different stakeholders in terms of the technical aspect, because it's not just cybersecurity. You have other people from the different tech teams like IT, infrastructure, database, CRM. And then there's the composition of the application, and then it goes to threat analysis. So you also be engaging with, let's just say, CTI team, wherein you gotta find out what are the different threats facing your industry and your particular organization. And then you're also gonna be working with the vulnerability management in terms of the analysis for vulnerability and weaknesses. And then finally, you have the attack modeling, and lastly, the risk and impact analysis. So compared to Stride, there are all these other factors or particular areas that are also checked. Okay, now, any questions so far? By the way, for those who are watching this in YouTube, you have the chat there. After the talk, I'm going to be like checking it. If you are in the BSides Perth Discord, I'm also going to be answering questions there after my presentation. Okay, so now let's go to mental health. Now, first things first, I have a trigger warning here. I'm going to be talking about mental health, challenges, and even references to suicide. Okay. For anyone here physically present, if at any time the topic that I'm talking about makes it very difficult for you to continue listening, please do not hesitate to go out and go to a quiet space and compose yourself, because your well-being is more important. Even at this particular time, please go ahead. I will not be mad or anything. I'm very proud of you for being here, but if it's too much, please go ahead, because your well-being is more important than my talk. Okay, now just to clarify, these are meant as general tips, and this is not a substitute for therapy, psychological, or psychiatric advice. But what I want to impart is a message that it's okay to talk about this. In fact, it's very important that we talk about this and seek help. Okay. So let me just clarify, let's go in terms of definitions, okay? So for World Health Organization, this is their definition. So they define mental health as a state of well-being in which an individual realizes his or her own capabilities, can cope with normal stresses of life, can work productively, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So there are several words and phrases I have highlighted here. It's just to let you know that it is about well-being, about realizing your abilities. You can cope, okay? You can work productively, and you can make a contribution to your community. So this is the definition of World Health Organization. Now, quick, thing. What's the first thing that comes into your mind when you saw this particular slide, this photo? Anyone at the back? Fiona? Okay. Any other? Joy. Anything else? Freedom. Freedom. Okay. Okay. So a lot of people, when they think about the word mental health, it's always like joy and all those things, exuberance and all those things. But mental health, it's a spectrum. Okay, it's a spectrum. Now, what about this? Once you see this, you saw this particular photo, what comes into your mind? Grief? Sorry? Sorry? Is it Jira? Just kidding. Jira tickets. Just kidding. What else? Anybody? What, sorry? I couldn't really hear. Okay. So for majority of the people who told me, the first thing that comes to their mind when they see this photo is like, extreme stress, could be like frustration. Okay, so these are all part. It's like a spectrum, like the things like mental health. It involves being able to cope with the daily, stresses that we face. Now let's look at some statistics. Okay, so being the nerd that I am, I love looking at reports, even reading journal publications. So from WHO, they came up with the World Mental Health Report, and in 2019, they actually have this number that 1 billion people are living with mental disorder, and 15% of working age adults experience a mental disorder. And then, of course, surprise, surprise, COVID-19 has triggered a 25% increase in general anxiety and depression worldwide. I'll be honest with you, I was deeply affected by COVID-19. Not just because we were locked down in Melbourne, by the way, I'm from Melbourne, it's because I've lost a lot of people to the virus. I've lost former colleagues, former classmates, relatives, and there's also people who weren't, really sick with COVID, but because of the breakdown in the hospital systems, their medical conditions deteriorated. Yeah. Now, some green stats, so that's like from a global perspective. Let's look at the local numbers. So this is a number, it's really quite high for me. 9 Australians die every day due to suicide, and that's more than double the road toll. And this is something that's really weighed heavily in my heart. 75% of those who take their own life are male. So I have a lot of male friends. I love my male friends. You could ask my male friends, and they'll tell you, I tell them, I love you. Okay, and it's not in a romantic sense. I love them as if they were my brother. Okay, now, each year, over 65,000 Australians make an attempt. And it is the leading cause of death for Australians between the ages of 15 to 44, okay? And then, another thing is that for the LGBTIQ plus community, they have a higher, significant rates of suicide than the rest of the population. And then the interesting thing here is that this is a study wherein they found out that for each life that is lost to suicide, 135 people are affected or felt by it. It could be those first responders, the emergency responders, work colleagues, family members, friends, okay? And to you, you may think 135 is just a number. But for me, I'm one of those 135 people. I lost two former colleagues, 4 guys, and then I lost a cousin to suicide. So there's always a hole in my heart that will never ever heal. And that's one of the reasons why this mental health is one of my personal advocacies. Now, I talk about the mental health from the perspective of definition of the World Health Organization. For MHFA, this is the Mental Health First Aid Australia. So just to clarify, whenever you hear mental health first aid, it started first here in Australia and it actually spread all over the world. So for MHFA Australia, the definition of mental health is it's a continuum. Okay, and it can range from good mental health to mental illness. And a person will move along this continuum in their entire lifetime. It could be you start out, on this part of the continuum, you move to a little bit part of this, then you move. So it's really a continuum. Okay. And then in terms of prevalence of mental health problems, about 4 million of us Australians, 1 in every 5 Australians, suffers from mental illness in a given year. And our top 3 mental health problems are 1, depression, 2, anxiety, and 3, substance abuse. I've also looked at, because I've presented a version of this to some of the DEFCON groups in the US, I look at also their statistics there, and depending on the year, it's also the same, 3, depression, anxiety, substance. Sometimes anxiety a little bit on top, but it's always almost these 3 mental health problems, both in Australia and also in the US. So bringing it back to our industry. Okay, I didn't draw, I got all these, emojis, this one. I think it kind of sums up, our continuum in a day. We've had our coffee in the morning. Yes, we're happy. Then all these issues, incidents, all those things happening. Sometimes to the point that we have to, even work late at night. Okay? So we have all these industry challenges: stress, fatigue, frustration, and burnout. Now, for this particular presentation, I have actually new data points. For those who have seen my CrikeyCon or my ISA CyberCon talk, there are 2 studies that I now have included in this version of my presentation. So this was the IBM Security Incident Responder Study that IBM commissioned morning consult, and interviews were conducted online, and a sample of 1,107 cybersecurity incident responders. This is globally. Okay, this is globally. Now, one of the things, and I am, as an incident responder, as a defender, one of the things that I really love about my job is that I have a sense of duty to protect and to defend. So I've always been proudly a blue teamer, but with a purple team mindset. Now, no surprise, the first 3 days of responding to an attack is the most stressful. Now, I joke, like, by the time that this was created and released, I've already been out of the IBM X-Force IR, but I talked to other former X-Force IR, and we joke, IBM did not include us in the sample because the numbers will have been higher. So, okay, what are the findings? 81% of the respondents think that it is the rise of the ransomware that has actually worsened the stress and psychological demands on incident responders. 68% of the responders said that it is somewhat common for them to respond to 2 or more incidents that overlap. So for me, that's common for me. But I have been diagnosed late in life with ADHD, and my ADHD loves that kind of, multitasking, as if I was born to do this kind of job, okay? And then 67% experience stress, anxiety in their daily lives as a result of responding to incidents. In my case, at the end of the day, I always reflect on what have I done? Can I do better? And even when I'm showering, doing like other things, non-work stuff, I'm always thinking about how can I do better? Or did I miss something? So I always think about this, okay? Now, 65% of those incident responders that responded to the survey sought mental health assistance. For me, that's quite low. Because if you are always, dealing with this kind of stress, okay, 65% of that is quite low. Maybe there is fear, shame, embarrassment, and all those things. And especially for me, I grew up in a country wherein going to a psychologist is considered a taboo, and you're not supposed to talk about it because you're crazy. But things have been improving a bit, but still not that good. Now, so that is the global IBM incident responder study. Now we go to Australia. So this particular survey was from Securo. It's a cybersecurity mental health survey, and it was released on the World Mental Health Day last year on the 10th of October. And their sample size is a little bit smaller compared to the IBM study. It's just 101 cybersecurity professionals. And this one, instead of just incident responders, it's cybersecurity as a whole, the entire, like the industry. Okay, who among you have heard of this report before? Anyone? Okay, just one. Okay, so here, okay, the numbers are quite telling. 9 in 10 cybersecurity professionals reported experiencing mental health challenges at work over the past 2 years. Of course, no surprise, because when we went on, like all the lockdowns, everybody went online, and you have the proliferation of different scams, all those challenges. So that's not a surprise. And then in the industry, half of the responder actually attributed their mental health struggles at work due to poor culture and or management styles. There's a saying that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. Okay, and then 50% or half of them also pointed out to the high stress nature of the job in our cybersecurity, in our industry, as something that impacted their mental health. And almost 2 in 5 have actually quit the industry. For me, this is really a bad number, because we are always saying we need more people, because the attacks, all these incidents, they're always, going up. They're not going down. But then people who are supposed to be protecting, defending us, they're all living, 2 out of 5 has quit the industry. For me personally, when I shifted from a non-tech to a tech-focused career, my mentor was my high school best friend. She was a programmer, but she quit due to bullying, and I've always remembered all the things that she, had to endure. And then only to find out later on that I will also face the same thing. And one of the things, like recently, there was one woman I worked with, fantastic analyst, but left the industry just because of one guy. Okay, I'm not saying, that it's. I say guy as, not guys, all of you, okay? There are some. And I'm talking here because I know the fact that you're listening, you are allies, okay? And I want to make sure that we always have diversity and inclusivity in our industry. Okay, now, so with that, let me just clarify certain things about stress, because everybody talks about stress. So what is stress? It's just any physical or emotional reaction to certain conditions. So they also have what is called positive stress, negative stress. Like positive stress, I'm getting married, or we're going on a holiday, but there's the negative stress. So when we talk about negative stress, we have these certain types. Okay, so there is what is known as the acute stress. So this is the most common type of stress. And then once the stressor is gone, this stress goes away. So that's acute. Okay, and then you have the episodic stress. This happens when the acute stress happens frequently without enough recovery time. So think of it from the perspective of, there's an incident, okay, acute stress. Okay, then you have resolved it, okay, okay, now I'm okay. But if it frequently happens and you don't have enough recovery time, then that is considered episodic stress. And this is the one that will lead to lesser tolerance in terms of other stress events. And then you have the chronic stress, which is long-term stress. It's like, for example, you're always in a constant state of stress. So for people who are actually in the battlefield, out there, the soldiers, they will have this chronic stress. They will always have to be alert because there may be a bomb, or there may be guerrilla, all these things happening out there in the battlefield. And this chronic stress is the one that has the most significant serious effect in our physical and our mental health. And episodic and chronic stress contributes to operational risk and burnout. And that's actually, there's a study, so this came from research done by Dijkstra and Paul. Okay, by the way, later on, I have a slide with all the sources there. You could take a photo of that, okay? Now, about this, thank you very much to, I forgot the name of the guy from Canva yesterday. He actually already covered, okay, yeah, hi. Thank you very much for covering this, so I don't have to cover this. So for everybody, okay, can just go back, watch his presentation. It's about the definition of burnout. There's 3, dimensions there, okay? Now, so I've talked about all the numbers, the statistics, the definitions, and I've also talked about threat modeling. Let's look at the safety plan. Okay, so who among you have heard of the safety plan? Okay, just a few. Okay, so safety plan is something that is provided to, and it's actually something that is done for people with suicidal, thoughts. Okay, so for example, if you have thoughts of harming yourself, you talk to a counselor, to your GP, your psychologist, your psychiatrist, they will come up with a safety plan for you. So there are 4 steps there, okay? Now, I am reconceptualizing this as your mental health threat model. Think of step 1 as the identification. Think of step 2 to 4 as your mitigations. So this is what I'm approaching it. It's like our own personal mental health threat modeling. So let's look at this. So the first step is know when to get help. So you need to identify, you have to I hope after this talk, you take a time, to think about what are the warning signs, the personal warning signs that you're beginning to struggle with your problem, okay? You think about what are those thoughts, those feelings or behaviors, okay? So it's gonna do, you have to do a lot of self-reflection, okay? And you have to be honest with yourself. And then step 2, the coping skills. So if you encounter these thoughts, these feelings, these behaviors, what can you do by yourself in order to take your mind off the problem? Healthy, coping mechanisms, not drink yourself to death, okay? And then what are any obstacles to using these coping skills? Okay, so you think about that, so that's step 2. So now, what has worked for me? So these are some of the simple techniques. So breathing helps. I don't have the exact names of those psychological studies, but there are certain techniques. There's a box technique, there's these number techniques, but what has worked for me is that I count like 4, like inhale, then hold for 2, and then exhale for a longer count, like 6 or 8. So these deep breaths will help activate your parasympathetic nervous system, helps calm you. So there were times before I had, when I was working as a consultant, a CISO from Europe who was actually yelling on me on the phone, hey, I want you to show me the results and all those things. And I'm sorry, I can't. No, you have to show it to me right now. And they're like, what are you? You're not so professional. I'm going to go to another one. And then finally, when he ran out of breath, I said, I can't share with you my screen because you called the hotline, you're on the phone. And I asked, okay, give me 5 minutes to hop into, MS Teams to be with you. So that 5 minutes, I took these deep breaths because I was really trembling. Okay, and it's like reflecting upon that. I remember like at night after that particular yelling situation, I remembered because several years ago I was in an on-site, assignment, and there was a CISO who wanted to beat me up. Yeah. So, yeah, because at the time I was doing training, he paid for 5 individuals. He wanted to have 15 people come in. And I said, we can give you like, free 2 people seats, but not that because that's too much. And he was really angry. And his body language was, he was about to punch me. But after that, I went for a Krav Maga lessons. Okay. Anyway, another thing is grounding, think about the present time. So that's what I also did. So I remember like, why was I trembling? Even at, like, that night, I was like still, there's also that anxiety. And then I remembered it's because of what happened to me before. It triggered certain things in my body. Okay, and so I had to ground myself. No, that was before, I'm present right now. And another way is blowing on the hand to remind myself I'm here, because sometimes our minds will take us to those previous negative experiences or situations. Okay, so blow on the hand and then describe to yourself what you're feeling. So it's like grounding yourself in the moment. Another is visualization. So I think of like the tree, like I do that movements, okay? That's why I like working from home, because when I get stressed out with work, I stand up and I just imagine I'm just a tree blowing in the wind, okay? And then I also have like strong visualization skills. Another is leaves floating. So I just imagine myself, I'm under a nice tree, and then there's like a brook by the tree, and then I imagine my concern, it's a leaf, and then it like broke off from the tree, and then it floated on that water and started moving away. So that's like, bye-bye, Jira ticket number, whatever. And then, okay, another ticket, Jira ticket number, okay, bye-bye. So those are the things that has worked for me. So I hope some of these tips, you incorporate them, try to figure out what works for you. Okay, and then another thing is the use of healthcare technology. So we have several, apps available. Some are free, some are not. Very good one from Australia is Smiling Mind. That one is for free. And then we also have here from Reach Out, Worry Time. So please take photos of these, because there's a lot of these apps that are useful. Some are paid, some are not. So it's quite useful. It helps me. I have those apps on my phone to help me, when I need, chance to focus on things, to make sure that I stop, worrying about, other things, okay? Now, let's go to the third part of the mental health threat model that is about social support. If you are unable to deal with your distress mode by yourself, contact a trusted family member or friend so you will have your own contact list there. Have a list if your first choice is not available, okay? So another thing is like what we do here, the fact that everybody's here on a weekend and then we all turn up for work on Monday, it just shows the level of commitment that we have towards learning and also sharing knowledge and also catching up with the friends we've made in the conferences. Okay, now, so speaking of that part 3 of our mental health threat model, there are spectrum of interventions. So we have there from prevention, early intervention, treatment, and there is this, think of it, it's in terms of your continuum of your mental health. You are well, becoming unwell, then recovering. And this arrow here, it's where mental health first aid can help. You have mental health first aiders. Just to clarify, they are not there to diagnose. It's not part of mental health first aid. Who among you has done first aid from Red Cross? First aid. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so you have an idea that you're there to respond because something happened. Okay, this one is helping people talk about what are the different situations and then what are the pathways to access help. Okay, so this is where mental health first aid can help. Okay, so there's no diagnosis being done. Okay, just to clarify. And then the last one is about seeking help from professionals. If the problem persists and there's still some very negative, dark thoughts, please reach out to a professional support system, okay? And then part of the safety plan is actually making a pact and signing it. Meaning, you are going to use steps 1, 2, 3 to help yourself. And you're not gonna act on your thoughts of killing yourself, okay? Now, when I included here the Kubler-Ross stages of grief, because there are times wherein we are grieving not just because somebody has, died. It could be that we're grieving about, other parts of our lives. Like, for example, it may be that you figured out this is not a place for you in the organization. And so at first, you're denying, no, this is the best organization because I'm being paid for the first time in my life, the highest, salary that I've ever had in my life. And then there's anger later on because of the things happening. And then you're trying to bargain, it's okay, I'm getting paid a lot of money, although I'm like working 60, 70 hours and my boss doesn't like really listen to me or doesn't really, listen to my concerns. And then later on you feel sad. And then you move into acceptance. I think this is not the job for me. This is not, something for me. Then you move on. So this DABDA, the stages of grief, happens not just because somebody has died, it applies to other parts of our lives too. Okay? Now, just to clarify, it's not all doom and gloom. Okay? We can do this. Okay? So first off, okay, remember, you matter. All of you matter. For those people watching in YouTube, you all matter. Make sure that you use the techniques here. Use the model, the mental health threat modeling approach that I taught you. And remember that you are not alone. There are always other people in the community, in your organization, who are willing to listen. But don't be afraid to ask for help. And then, second, make sure you practice self-care. When we say self-care, people think, I'm gonna go on a spa, all those things. No, sometimes simple things like doing your hobbies or like cooking, baking, woodwork, all those things, or just taking a nap, resting, self-care. Remember, you hack, forensicate, eat, hydrate, sleep, repeat, do your self-care. It's just a cycle, okay? And then, consider going for MHFA training. So in your organizations, maybe talk to your managers, hey, I'm like interested in doing this. And now I'm telling you, since now I'm an MHFA accredited instructor, If you have 6 people willing to do the training, let me know. I'll do it for you, because my personal goal in a decade is to train 1,000 cybersecurity professionals to become mental health first aiders. So I'm telling it to everyone now. You heard it first in BSides Perth. That is my personal goal as an instructor. Please help me do that. Okay. Other kinds of training, it may be that you're more interested in suicide prevention. There's also ASIS. So right now, I'm not an accredited ASIS trainer, but I have gone through the ASIS training. Okay, and then build a culture of openness and support and make sure that you have support for well-being. So once again, hats off to Canva for like that check-in and all those things, that emoji. Now, I also have to clarify, sometimes if you have a bad relationship with your manager, you sort of like mask and just keep on saying like, I'm happy, but inside you're not. Okay, try to do something about it, because no job is worth your mental health. Just remember that. Okay, and then don't be afraid to lean on your community. Ask people, talk to people in person, virtual. There's a lot of discords. People have actually started like chatting a lot, so it just reminded me of my IRC days. I think I've aged myself there. And then now consider the power of collective action for the greater good. Okay, you know, for those people who know me personally, I'm very upfront. I don't do BS stuff and all those things. Sometimes in an organization, no matter how much you want to advocate for things, or sometimes no amount of deep breathing, you know, meditation, mindfulness can actually fix a broken system. So in that case, that's why you need to work with other people in the industry, help make sure that our industry remains an industry that everybody could thrive, whether you're neurotypical, neurodiverse. And for those who may not be familiar, we actually have a union for professionals. So the union is Professionals Australia. So this screenshot, actually, it's a conversation between Security Jesus and ChatGPT to describe this organization. So not just people in tech, IT, cybersecurity, even pharmacists, you know, scientists, engineers, game developers. So that's Professionals Australia. Okay. Now, these are the sources and resources. Please take a photo of this. So if you're interested in reading the reports, the studies, you know, the statistics, please take a photo. Then I've actually put all my social media accounts, because my DMs are open. Because if anyone, I've always said that if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me afterwards. Or, hey, I'm feeling this or that. Yeah, let's have a conversation, because you are important to me. Okay, everyone here, you are important. Okay, and I will listen to you. And if you ask, you know, for advice or question, yes, then I will say, oh, these are the options, all those things. So with that, I hope that this talk has inspired you to go for mental health first aid course, or be an ally, and just to be, you know, someone who makes sure that they take care of themselves and also help other people become mentally, okay in our environment. So with that, thank you very much. Do we have any? Okay. So, are there any questions here? Yes.
You talk about professionals within the cybersecurity realm, but there are also customers that have experienced cybercrime that's impacted psychologically. Do you know, are there any sort of public places that people can go to speak to about their, I guess, problems or their issues that they, especially from the customer side, like our
Yeah, okay. So the question is, if you haven't heard it in the video, if like what about those on the side of customers or consumers who have experienced cybercrime or cyber attack? Where can they go to for help? So currently it is ID Care here in Australia, and so far it's them, but we just have to be patient because they are really inundated with calls for help, and that's why I've previously talked about, I've done a lot of other presentations. It's like for us in the community, let's also be open and like try to help them. But it is also quite challenging because there's also the concerns about the advice that we give them. So you always have to preface it that, hey, I'm just doing it on a personal basis. It's not as an incident responder for this particular company and all those things. Yeah, there is actually a need for that. Yeah, so far, right now in Australia, it's ID Care. Yeah, okay. Anybody else? Yes.
Great presentation, thank you. Some of the stats that you mentioned looked at incident response, but does any of the data show that professionals working in a particular domain of cyber have a higher prevalence of negative mental health than other areas of cyber?
Okay, so the question is that the numbers that I've shown is for incident responders. What about people who are working in other parts of cybersecurity? So the first study from IBM that's specifically focused on incident responder, the Securo study survey based in Australia, it's actually people from other parts of cybersecurity, but the sample size is too small and it doesn't really state which particular, aspects in cybersecurity or like particular specialization. But that is a great question because maybe I could run a survey myself. Maybe I'll run it like, yeah, okay. Thank you very much for that idea. Thank you. Okay, and is that all? We don't have any
more questions?
No. Okay.
It's pretty good. Maybe you've got a few DMs.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so thank you very much. And remember, maybe you're a little bit inhibited or shy in asking questions here. You know my different social media accounts. Just send me a DM and just like say, hi, I'm from BSides Perth. Like I heard from that because I present in different conferences so that I would remember which talk you're referring to. Thank you very much for listening.